Okay, so we switched to spline. Now what? Well, we're going to continue in much the same vein as we have already. We'll start using the body control as the core of the motion. So that's going to be our first port of call. We're going to get the body control working right, and then we'll start moving on to the controls that are attached to that. So the hips, the chest, the arms, the legs, the head. And further to that, I'll often have an order of doing things. So like I said, I'll start with the body control as the core of the motion, but I'll usually do that in combination with the legs. So if we get the legs, the lower half of the body working, as that is the driver behind all of the motion, you can pretty much be guaranteed that you can make the upper body work as long as you've got the lower half of the body working. So the push off from the platform, the squash on the legs in the air, the stretch down to the ground, the cushioning and the contact on the ground. As long as that's all working, I know that we can make the top half work based off what the bottom half is doing, because we've got the foundations working. So I'll do that by looking at the perspective view, the camera view, and now I'm going to use the graph a lot more than we have been. So I'll start by grabbing the Y translate as we have done before, and now I'm really just looking at the graph and the Y translation and just seeing how it plots that motion. So now we can really study it and use it to our advantage. And part of that is offsetting keys. So I'll be grabbing different keys on different controls, and I'm going to be moving them earlier and later on the timeline. So whereas in blocking we had all our keys on the same frame numbers, that's not going to be the case now. So things might look a little bit messy, and we might break a little bit some of the poses we had previously set. So arms might start overstretching as we move the body control away from the arm controls. But that's fine, it's all part of the process, so don't worry too much. Just keep your eyes on what we're aiming for and stay with me, we will get through this together. So before we go any further, actually, let's save our scene. So we've moved on from block, so let's change it now to Anim version 1.1 and save as. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take a look at what we've got, and I'm just looking at the animation now, and all I'm really thinking about is the Y, so the up and down, and looking at how long it takes him to rise up into the air, how long he is in the air, and then how long it takes to come down. And so like I said, it feels a bit lethargic, the way he leaves the platform. So I think he just feels a little too slow, not quite explosive enough for a superhero. So I'm just going to pull him down a little bit lower to begin with, just by grabbing the keys on the Y translation. So selecting them, holding shift and middle mouse, dragging them down. Make sure you've hit W for the translate tool, otherwise you won't be able to move them. So I'm just shifting them up and down. If I hold shift, it locks them from going in between frames, so you can see left and right now it's not moving anywhere because I held shift and started moving down. You can move them left and right and it will just snap between between frames. So if I select this key here, and I'm just going to move it a couple of frames earlier, just so we get to the top of that launch sooner, which will make it faster. And then I can grab this other key here and just rise that, just to smooth out the top of that arc, or the top of the leap. You know, the Y curve is quite a literal curve, so I can see over here on the left is where I'm on the platform, and then if I follow it along, you can see as we rise up towards the top of the jump, and then we start to come down. So it's a very literal curve, so you can really sculpt it just by a combination of moving the keys and then grabbing these handles. These are attached to every key, and I can just middle mouse and manipulate each side of the handle just to smooth it out as much as we need to get the motion we're looking for. And like I said, when we come down I feel like we're just going a bit quick, so I think I'm probably going to just see what happens if I just start lowering this, actually, just to smooth out that feeling, because you see you've got it drops a lot in a short space of time here, so I'm just going to make that a little smoother, rather than something like this means it will drop like a rocket and then hold in the air and then drop again. So if I just make that a little bit smoother. And you see, by doing this, I do start to lose a little bit the poses I had in terms of where the arms and legs are, but that's okay. We're going to go through and we're going to fix that stuff. So let's have a check and see how that is feeling. I'm going to hit play. I should still be getting real time, so that should be fine. Cool, so that is starting to feel a bit nicer to me. It looks like we've got a faster and more explosive launch. So we've got a nice cushion, but now you really feel those legs engage and explode off of that platform into the leap. So that's great. Something I do see though is that if you just watch the hips on that launch, it doesn't have a clean path of action. So it launches off here and it's going graphically in screen space, it's going right to left, but then it goes up. It stops moving right to left, it goes up, and then it starts going right to left again. So it doesn't have a continuous motion. There's a small pause there which feels unnatural. So let's check out that translate Z curve, which is the backwards and forwards. See what's happening. So there it is. You can see that curve has a fast rise and then a hold. So that means it's moving forward and then it's slowing down. So let's grab hold of that and just pull it down, which will move it back. And it's the same principle as the Y. It's just not quite as literal. So you have to think of it in different terms. But if we look at this, I can see that the first keys start rising fairly quickly at a pretty constant pace, and then there is a hold. They don't rise quite as quickly, and then they rise quickly again. So that is the forward momentum. So now I need to clean this curve. Cleaning, basically, I'm trying to get a nice smooth curve, which will give me a smoother motion going forward on our character. So I'm just going to zoom in and just start to pull some of these down, just so that forward travel doesn't happen so quickly, so it has a slower motion, a more natural forward momentum, until we get to hit the ground there, and then that energy is taken out of it quickly, but not as quick as we had it. So I'm just going to, again, just looking at this curve, thinking about its forward motion. This is a fairly long process. We're going to go through each curve for each control and just start cleaning them. This is the first time I'm doing it for this piece of animation too, so we're in this together, but we can get through it. It's going to be fun and it's going to look awesome. But before then, let's just check out the hips, because I'm not loving the shapes I'm getting on that leap. Feels a bit like he's sticking his bum out or something, but it's not too dissimilar to the reference actually, that maybe I stick my bum out. Who knows, but so I won't worry too much for the moment, but maybe just keep an eye on that. But let's just have a look at that rotation X and just have a check. So just make sure we're in gimbal, so that make sure that is the true curve I'm looking for, and it is. So here we can see that we're leaning forward as we launch off the platform, leaning forward up here, and then we get into the tuck and we lean even further forward as we tuck our body. I'll just reduce some of that, and then as we start to fall, so that curve starts to drop away as our body starts to lean back. So I'll just smooth some of this out so it's not quite so sudden, and then as we land it suddenly lurches forward, which is fine because we want that big change in contrast. Oops, don't move the whole thing. What I want to get out of the launch though is that in the reference it's nice how you can feel that the chest kind of leads the action and the hips follow through the same line, much like a snake would travel through the same path. So that's something I want to replicate in mine, whereas I don't quite get that feeling just yet. It feels as though the chest and the hips have kind of got their own paths, but I want them to go through the same path. Now possibly I've just adjusted that forward momentum a bit too harshly, so let's have a look at that and just let's move him forward a bit earlier, just trying to make it feel, that's getting better, that we're going through the same path of action. So again, let's move him forward a bit here as well. That feels more like it. I still felt like he could launch off the platform with a bit more power. She still feels a little slow on that leap, so we might want to exaggerate what's happening in the reference. Yeah, that reference has given us a good amount of weight in the animation, but I think if we just exaggerate it and just make it more explosive, it's going to feel more superhero. You know, we're not going for 100% reality here. We're allowed to make our own choices and improve things or make things feel the way we want them to be. You know, you've got a range of super cartoony to super realistic. Ours is somewhere in between. It's more realistic than cartoony, but you still need to be able to make your own artistic choices, and part of that is exaggerating the motion that you get from the reference. So I'm just adjusting this Y curve here just to try and get up to the top of the apex a little bit snappier, a bit sooner, just reduce some of that feeling of heaviness that's making him feel a little bit, you know, a little bit bigger than he actually is. I'm just going to reduce our frame range a bit as we're getting a big pause at the start and end. So I'll click this little grey square and just drag the time slider in on the left, which makes the head of the shot shorter, and I'll do it the same on the right, which makes the end of the shot shorter. And we're just focusing on our jump section for the moment. Just means that when I hit play, it's going to loop that section more quickly and we can see what's going on. And there he goes. Okay, so I think I'm just looking at the hips now, really, the body control. That is feeling pretty good. We might be ready to move on. I'll just check from other angles. Always make sure you check. Let's look from the front. Okay, that's good. No big surprises there. From the other side, it's going to look quite different to what you're used to, but that is a good thing. Let's check from the top. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the legs.